I told my boss to stop the presentation. That's the sentence that keeps replaying when I brush my teeth or wait for the elevator. I said it into a room full of investors wearing the kind of suits that look like they have NDAs sewn into the lining. I didn't whisper. I didn't ask. I said it like a man who'd already accepted the cost. If you're hoping for a hero speech, you'll be disappointed. It wasn't courage. It was a knot in my stomach that refused to untie, and the quiet certainty that if I stayed seated, I'd be complicit in something we wouldn't survive. My name is Ethan, 32, senior analyst at a mid-sized tech company that sells workflow software to people who say words like enablement with a straight face. We weren't sexy. We were stable. That was the pitch. I liked that about us. We made a dashboard for operations teams that actually saved time, and our churn curve looked like a polite handshake instead of a roller coaster. On paper, we were the kind of company that shouldn't need to exaggerate to raise money. That's why the knot bothered me. The warning didn't come as a number, it came as a sentence. 2 days before the investor demo in a final polish meeting, my boss Michael leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers like he'd practiced it, and said, "All we need is clean momentum." Simple. Innocent. Except momentum is never clean. Not in SaaS. It dips when you ship a feature nobody asked for. It spikes when a partner blasts your link on their newsletter. It breaks when a 2-year customer decides to rip you out for something cheaper. Real momentum looks like a lie detector test. Ours suddenly looked like a ruler. I run our cohort models. If revenue is the headline, cohorts are the footnotes that tell you what the story actually said. Days earlier, I'd exported a fresh pull to compare logo retention with our expansion-adjusted retention, the trick everyone uses to look better. If one customer buys more seats, it hides another walking out the door. It's not cheating if you disclose it. We did, always had, but the new slide pack in the shared drive had a different set of footnotes. Shorter, simpler, too simple. I told myself I was paranoid. Late nights before a raise will do that. Still, after that meeting, I stayed at my desk when the floor emptied. I rebuilt the MRR bridge with the same SQL I'd used 100 times. Bookings, downgrades, churn, expansion. The totals matched Finance's monthly report to the dollar, which should have calmed me. It didn't. The shape didn't match the slides. Our net retention line in the deck was a smooth 118, 120% for 6 straight quarters. My export showed 117.6, 121.3, 140.9, 109.1, 116.2, 120.7. Close, yes. Smooth? No. Rounding doesn't iron wrinkles. Someone had ironed. I walked down to Finance. Lights off. The only sound was the ice machine kicking on like a cough. I thought about texting Jenna, our controller, but it was past 10, and I'm not the guy who drags people back to the office for a hunch. I copied the slide pack to my desktop and left the office with that knot still there, sitting where dinner should have been. The next morning, Michael called a quick run-through. He thrives on those. He's the kind of leader who believes volume equals conviction. And he had a crowd, product, sales, finance, our CEO, even 2 board members lurking in the back like proctors. He cleared his throat and clicked through the opening. Problem, market, why us? Polished enough to eat off. I watched hands, not faces. Hands tell you more. The CEO's thumbs tapped together. Sales VP drummed a pen. Jenna folded her arms tighter than usual. Michael got to the growth engine slide, and the room leaned in like it always does when you promise compounding. Net retention is a clean 118, Michael said, the exact phrase from 2 days before. Voice bright enough to bounce. Clean. The word again. He glanced at me, not for approval, for effect, and moved on. I didn't stop him. I didn't even cough. I took notes like a good analyst. After in the hallway, he clapped my shoulder and said, "Save your questions for after the money, champ." I gave a non-committal nod that looked like agreement if you didn't know me. At lunch, I ate a turkey sandwich over my keyboard and reopened the deck. Slide properties don't lie. The retention chart was linked to a hidden tab called Investor View, not the standard metrics sheet. That's not inherently wrong. We all build investor views. But when I unhid the sheet, the formulas weren't references. They were numbers, pasted, hard, which means you can make them anything you want, and they will never change unless you want them to. My stomach did not then. It dropped. I walked to Jenna's office. She was in headphones, eyes on a reconciliation screen, the temple crease that shows up when she finds a penny missing. I waited. She pushed the headphones down to her neck. "You look like you swallowed a thumbtack," she said. I closed the door. "Did you build the investor net retention tab?" She blinked. "I sent Michael the exports. That's it." I told her what I found without adjectives. Her jaw tightened. "Send me the file." I did. She didn't swear. She's professional. She just said, "I'll handle it," which is scarier. 2 hours later, she swung by my desk, face neutral. "We're aligned," she said, which is finance code for we aren't. "But we'll pretend until the meeting is over. Present what's in the deck. If it comes up, I'll support." Support what? I wanted to ask. The number in the system or the number in the room? But the floor was already filling with visitors. Caterers dropping off coffee, operations wheeling in chairs, our CEO's assistant adjusting name placards like chess pieces. If you've never been in one of those meetings, the physics are weird. Sound is slightly too quiet. People speak in the middle of their throats, like they're saving their top and bottom octaves for later. Everyone smells like hotel soap. You stop being a person and become your title. Mine was on a white card. Ethan, analytics, small font, accurate. I took a seat by the wall with the other function people. We're there for the slide where someone may point to us and say, "Ethan can speak to that. It's a flattering kind of furniture." The investors filed in, handshakes, water bottles. That quick scan of the room everyone does to confirm where the exits are. Michael did his pre-game routine, jacket buttoned, tie straightened, smile checked in his reflection on the black TV. He's good at this. That's why he's in the middle, and I'm by the wall. The CEO opened with gratitude. "Thank you for your time, your interest, your whatever." She's good at sincerity that doesn't sound rented. She handed it to Michael. Lights dimmed. First slide landed. He hit his marks. Market size, go-to-market, CAC payback. I listened the way you listen to a test you've already taken. I knew every answer. That wasn't comfort. It just meant I knew exactly where we could get caught. I turned my notebook to a fresh page and wrote a single line. What will I wish I had done? It's a trick I use when my head gets noisy. It cuts through rehearsal. I underlined it. The pen left a dark groove. Michael advanced to the engine slide. The line curved like a promise. My chest tightened in the exact way it does 2 steps before a sprint. He said, "Our net retention is a clean 118. The investors leaned in, the way they always do for compounding. My hand didn't go up. Not yet. The knot did. It nested under my ribs and set its hook as if it knew the exact shape of my insides. Maybe this is where a braver version of me would tell you I stood up then. I didn't. I waited for one more line, one more sentence to make sure this wasn't an overreaction or professional jealousy or that old urge to be the smartest person in the quietest chair. Michael smiled at the slide like it owed him money and said, "And the beauty is, it's steady across cohorts. No noise to explain." I felt something inside me click, small and final, like a lock turning. I didn't look at Jenna. I didn't look at the CEO. I watched the screen and listened to my own breathing, slow and even, and realized I'd already made the decision hours ago when I unhid that sheet and found numbers fossilized into truth. The rest was just walking my body to where my mind already stood. I didn't plan to speak. No one ever does in those rooms. You sit, you nod, you wait for the post-meeting chatter where people whisper what they really think. But something about the way Michael's voice rolled over those numbers, like they were gospel, made it impossible to swallow another breath. He was pacing, owning the room. These figures show consistency, predictability. Our investors' favorite words. The crowd smiled. Investors love clean lines, predictable growth, no friction. They like stories that sound inevitable. My palms were sweating through the notepad. I didn't even realize I was gripping it until the paper crumpled. My heart was doing that steady high thud that feels like a countdown. And then Michael said it again. We're seeing this pattern quarter after quarter. Uninterrupted retention. Uninterrupted. That's the word that broke me. My voice came out before I even stood. Stop the presentation. The sentence didn't echo. It didn't boom. It just landed flat and heavy like a file dropped on a desk. The room froze. The projector hummed. Michael turned toward me, his smile still in place, but his eyes already narrowing. Excuse me, I stood. Stop the presentation, I repeated. Now. For 2 seconds no one moved. Then you could hear the chairs creak, the rustle of someone shifting. The CEO blinked once, slow. The investors looked confused, like maybe this was part of the pitch, some dramatic reveal. It wasn't. Michael's face stiffened. Ethan, maybe you can clarify why you're interrupting a $40 million funding round? I swallowed, my throat raw and dry. Because what you're showing isn't accurate. The air changed. I could feel the heat rise behind my ears. Someone coughed. One of the board members leaned forward, his hand hovering over his tablet like he wanted to check the numbers himself. Michael's tone sharpened. That's a serious claim. Maybe you should explain before you embarrass yourself. I nodded once. The data on that slide, the Investor View tab, it's not linked to our live retention model. The numbers were hard-coded. You can verify it yourself. Silence. You could hear the low buzz of the projector and someone's phone vibrating against a table. Michael laughed, too loud, too quick. Ethan, you're misinterpreting an export. The file was finalized. You saw the sign-off. No, I said. I saw pasted numbers. There's a difference. He took a step toward me, voice clipped. You're way out of line. The CEO lifted her hand. Michael, her tone was measured, too calm. Let's pause. He turned toward her, half smile stretched too thin. With all due respect, we have 10 minutes left, and I said pause. The investors looked between them like spectators at a car crash. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. I wasn't proud of the adrenaline. It wasn't righteous. It was survival. Jenna spoke up from across the room, voice steady. He's right. The version in the deck doesn't pull from Finance's live sheet. It's a static copy. Michael spun toward her. We discussed alignment. Alignment doesn't mean editing, she said quietly. That was it. The first crack. You could hear it in the silence afterward. The realization that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was exposure. One of the investors cleared his throat. So, which numbers are correct? Jenna glanced at me. I met her eyes. The system version, I said. Always. Michael's smile died slow. You just tanked our raise, he hissed. I looked at him. No, I just stopped you from lying to the people funding it. That's when the CEO closed her laptop. A quiet, deliberate sound. We're ending here. She stood, thanked the investors for their time, and told them she'd follow up directly. They filed out in that careful way people do when they know something bad just happened, but aren't sure who it'll hit first. The door shut. Michael turned on me, voice low, venom soft. Do you have any idea what you just did? Yeah, I said. I stopped us from walking off a cliff. He laughed again, sharp. You think this makes you a hero? You just made us look incompetent. Better incompetent than fraudulent. Jenna flinched like the word had weight, and it did. Michael stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the kind that tries too hard to smell like control. You're finished here, he whispered. Maybe, I said, but so are you. He stared for a second too long, then turned, grabbed his laptop, and stormed out. The door slammed. The CEO didn't move. She just watched the empty space where he'd been. Then she said quietly, Ethan, Jenna, my office. 5 minutes. Jenna exhaled. That could have gone worse. I laughed once dry. It will. And it did. Because that was just the beginning. By the time I got to her office, Michael was already there, pacing like a man rehearsing a defense. The CEO sat behind her desk, calm in the way people get when they're angry, but still collecting the ammunition. Jenna stood near the window, arms folded, looking like she wished she'd taken the stairs slower. I closed the door behind me. The air was dense, the kind of silence that hums. Michael turned first. "You blindsided me in front of our investors," he snapped. "Do you have any idea how reckless that was?" I kept my voice level. "Reckless would have been letting you finish." His jaw twitched. "You embarrassed the company." "No," I said. "You did. I just pointed at it." The CEO lifted a hand, not to stop me, but to keep the explosion measured. "Enough." She leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Ethan, start from the top. I want to understand what you think happened." What I think. I remember how that phrasing made me pause. Safe phrasing, neutral phrasing, the kind people use when they're deciding who to save. I told her everything. The smoothing, the hard-coded figures, the fake, clean line that didn't match our exports. No adjectives, no accusations, just facts. When I finished, she turned to Michael. "Is that true?" He laughed without humor. "He's making it sound criminal. It was formatting. Optics. We needed to present a digestible story, not a wall of chaos." Jenna spoke quietly. "You can simplify without falsifying." Michael shot her a look that could have stripped us paint. "Oh, please. You all benefited from the optics. Don't pretend otherwise." The CEO's tone cooled. "Michael," he exhaled, forced calm. "Look, investors want a steady growth curve. This was a presentation, not a forensic audit. If we'd just gotten through today, I'd have rebuilt the data integrity post-close. Everyone wins." Everyone, but the truth. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The room already smelled like the inside of a burned wire, that hot, metallic scent of something short-circuiting. The CEO looked between us. "All right. Ethan, Jenna, thank you. I need a few minutes with Michael." Jenna's eyes flicked toward me. "Leave it." I did. Out in the hallway, the adrenaline finally started to fade, replaced by a shaky calm. My hands felt weightless, useless. Jenna caught up to me near the elevator. "You just detonated a bomb," she said. "He built it," I replied. She nodded once. Slow. "Still, get ready for fallout." Fallout came fast. By the time I got home that night, my inbox was a graveyard of urgent subject lines. The internal Slack channels were buzzing, not tagging me directly, but I didn't have to read between the lines. Unexpected interruption. Meeting derailed. Investor follow-up rescheduled. The next morning, I walked into the office, and the energy had shifted. People didn't make eye contact. Conversations paused when I passed. The brave ones patted my shoulder and said, "Hell of a move yesterday." The cautious ones just nodded. Michael wasn't in. His glass-walled office sat dark, the desk half empty. A quiet rumor said he'd been asked to work remotely. At noon, I got a calendar invite from the CFO. Subject, private, 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. No agenda, no explanation, just that. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept flipping between two futures, one where I was fired for insubordination, and one where I'd done the right thing and still lost anyway. You don't get medals for integrity in business. You get paperwork. At 7:30 sharp, I walked into the CFO's office. He was already standing by the window, coffee in hand, tie loosened. A spreadsheet glowed on his monitor. He didn't look up. "Close the door, Ethan." I did. He spoke without turning. "I've been digging through the backup files since last night." I waited. He turned finally. Tired eyes, but clear. "You were right." My chest didn't fill with pride, just air. For the first time in 2 days, I breathed normally. He continued. "Those numbers weren't just rounded. They were manipulated, manually overwritten in multiple versions. That's not formatting. That's misrepresentation. If those slides had gone out to investors, we'd be looking at potential legal exposure." He sat, gestured to the chair across from him. "You saved us." The words didn't feel heroic. They felt heavy. "I didn't save anyone," I said quietly. I just didn't want to lie. He studied me for a long moment. That's rare these days. He leaned back. Michael's being terminated effective immediately. Official story will be misalignment in leadership approach. HR's drafting the language now. I didn't react. There wasn't any joy in it, just relief. The dull, exhausted kind. The CFO slid a file across the desk. There's something else. The board knows what happened. The CEO's recommending we move analytics under finance control. You'd lead it, if you want it. I didn't touch the folder. I'll think about it. He nodded. Take your time. You've earned that. When I left his office, the hallway felt longer than usual. Quiet, wide, washed in early light from the windows. My badge beeped at the elevator. The sound echoed in my head, small and final. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the metal. Pale, tired, but still standing. I thought of Michael's words from the day before. You just tanked our raise, maybe. But I'd also just saved our name. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would change everything. When the press release went out, a week later, the language was as polished as marble. After 5 years of dedicated service, Michael Green has decided to pursue new opportunities. That was the line. No mention of data, no mention of deception, just the kind of corporate obituary that lets everyone walk away looking intact. The internal memo followed an hour later. Effective immediately, analytics and data integrity functions will now report under finance. Interim Director Ethan Cole. I stared at my name in the email like it belonged to someone else. Around me, the office hummed with that forced normalcy that comes after an earthquake, people acting as if the walls hadn't cracked. A few congratulated me in hushed voices. Some avoided me completely. You learn fast who values truth only when it's convenient. That night, I stayed late, not because of the new title, but because silence finally felt safe again. The conference room still smelled faintly of burnt coffee and nerves. I opened my laptop, scrolled to the old presentation, and deleted it. For good. Then I opened the live dashboard, the real one. The messy, uneven, beautifully honest data. No smoothing, no performance theater, just the truth. Jagged and human. It looked imperfect. And perfect. A few days later, the CEO called me into her office. She was different now. Softer, almost apologetic. You know, she said, when you stopped that presentation, I thought you'd lost your mind. Maybe I did, I replied. She smiled faintly. You didn't. You did what I should have done months ago. Thank you. I nodded, unsure what to say. Compliments don't land well when you've still got the smoke in your lungs, she went on. The board's impressed. They want you to consider taking this role permanently. Full director title. Compensation adjusted accordingly. I hesitated. Why me? Because you didn't flinch. There wasn't much else to say. I thanked her, shook her hand, and walked out. The sound of it all still too loud in my head. By Friday, the office felt lighter. Jenna stopped by my desk with 2 coffees and no words. Just a small nod that said everything. At lunch, the CFO passed me in the hallway. You did good, he said quietly. You know that? Good's relative, I answered. Depends on who's grading. He grinned. The right people are. Later that afternoon, I found myself in the same conference room where it all started. Same chairs, same projector. The reflection of the empty screen stretched across the table like a ghost. I sat where I had the first time, far end near the wall. The air still carried the memory of that moment, the way a room remembers its loudest silence. I leaned back, looked at the blank display, and said it again under my breath. Stop the presentation. It wasn't anger this time, it was closure. 3 months later, the company closed the funding round, cleanly, honestly, with the real numbers. Investors respected it more than we expected. One of them even mentioned during the call that transparency is rarer than growth. We didn't raise as much, but we raised enough, and this time no one flinched when we read the data out loud. I started sleeping better, eating slower. The tremor that had lived in my chest for months finally eased. Michael never called. I heard he tried to pitch another startup. Didn't land it. Last I saw of him was a LinkedIn post about resilience and leadership lessons learned. I didn't click it. Some stories don't need sequels. One evening, after a long day, I walked past the conference room again. The lights were off, the glass reflecting the city outside. For a second I saw my own reflection. Not the tired analyst who used to stay quiet, but someone steadier. The company was fine. The numbers were real. The storm had passed. I picked up my jacket, shut off the monitor, and stood there in the calm hum of the office. It turns out silence has a cost too, but I paid it once, and it bought me peace.